This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 20. This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by themakersguide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Griggs, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode, our 20th episode. I like to celebrate a little bit whenever I hit a milestone, and 20 episodes is a nice milestone because it's 20 episodes. So I'm very happy about that. One of the things that's really cool about having done a podcast for this past couple of months is that I've gotten to meet quite a few people and talk to folks from all over the world, and it has been a really great experience for me, and I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to it now. It's really cool because many of the people who have listened to the podcast have joined my private Facebook group, and in that group we get to talk about ideas and explore new things and exciting projects that they're working on. And for me, that is one of the really cool parts of this whole thing. And I really do enjoy that. It wasn't quite something that I was expecting to happen, but I'm so glad it did. So thank you again. Now let's get on with today's question, which comes to us from Steve Parker. Steve wants to know about toolpaths and some shortcuts for production. Thank you, Steve. That was a wonderful question. And it's one that bears thinking about, because anything that you can do that will save time in your setup while you're making your parts is a good thing. And doing a lot of repetitive cutting where you're making this a similar part every time, it can be really frustrating if you have to recreate the same tool path 20 times or 100 times to fit on a sheet. It would be nice if you were able to just do it once and have the program take care of all the heavy lifting. And up until recently, that wasn't something that could happen. But in the last version of VCarve Pro, VCarve Pro 8, which is what you are using, they introduced a new feature. And this new feature is perfect for this kind of thing where someone's going to make a whole lot of things. Now, one example of something that you might make a whole bunch of, but each one is slightly different, would be name tags or signage for a... let's say you got a commission to make the signage for a community center. So you'd need signs for the bathrooms and signs for the exits and all of these things. And from an aesthetic standpoint, you'd want those all to look similar. But they each have different elements on them. But because of the way that you designed these signs, they're all machined pretty much the same way. They just have things in different places. So you'd be forced in the old ways that the software was doing to have to select each individual tool path and each individual vector and create a tool path for it. For drilling your holes, you'd have to create one that was for drilling those holes. For putting in pockets, you'd have to do one for that, and the same for profiles. And you'd have to repeat this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again on this sheet of parts that you're creating. Well, the folks at Vectric came up with a solution for just that sort of situation to allow you to create a toolpath once and then reuse the characteristics of that toolpath on multiple similar jobs. And that is called Toolpath Templates, and it's a new feature in VCarve Pro. Now, it requires you to do a little work ahead of time that will save you a bunch of work later. So this is basically a quick, 10,000-foot view of that process. So let's assume you have you're planning to make these signs that we were discussing just a moment ago. And your first sign is the exit sign. So you'd have the outline of your sign, and inside the border of the sign, you would have the letters exit, and they're standing proud of the work inside of a pocket. Okay, and around the periphery, you might have 4 screw holes or something like that that you were going to put the final work piece up to the wall, attach it with screws. So you've got, in this example that I've just given you, you've got a profile toolpath that cuts it out. You've got a pocketing toolpath that cuts out the recess and the letters. And you've got a drilling toolpath, which would drill all those holes. So, and just to make matters more interesting, we could add a texture toolpath. So 4 toolpaths for each one of these signs. So, the 4th texture toolpath would make it look like, wood or pebbles or something, whatever texture textured surface you'd like to have in the bottom of that pocket. So, normally, that would require you to select the vector, select the type of toolpath you're using, pocketing, profiling, or whatever. Select the tool bit that you're going to use, set the depth that it's going to cut at, and etc., and calculate your toolpaths and proceed on. Well, in this case, we're going to do that once, but before we do that, we're going to do something that will aid you when you're laying out similar signs. And we're going to use the layering tool. Now, layers has been in this software, VCarve Pro, right from the beginning. And it's something that you should take the time to learn how to use and get used to using it, because it is helpful in so many different ways. But what it does is it allows you to move vectors, or copy vectors for that matter, onto separate layers so that similar things are on similar places. So you might create a layer that is called drilled holes. And that layer is where you would put all the circles that represent where you want your holes drilled for these signs. You might create another layer that is pocketed elements, or whatever you choose to name it. The name is unimportant. It's just so it's something that you could easily and quickly recognize what is on each layer. And so you'd create that layer, and you'd move the vectors that need to be pocketed onto that layer. And you do the same thing with the profile and with the texture. You'd create a layer for each one of those elements. And you would move the component, the vector components over into the proper layers. So now you've got this one sign which has 4 layers that you can turn off and on to show you different elements. Okay, and you would then go through and select the vectors on a particular layer, and you would go through and you would enter the values for the tool that you're going to use, how deep it's going to cut, etc. And whether it's profiling on the outside or the inside or whatever you would normally do to set up the toolpath. But before you close the window and hit calculate to close that window out, there is one new button that you need to select to make some magic happen. So down at the bottom of the Toolpath tab flyout window is a button which says Selector. And if you click on that button, it takes you into the Vector Selector window. And it's a dialog box with lots of choices there. And you're able to select different filters to determine the types of things that you want to do. So, for instance, you can check a box which will allow you to select any open vectors, or another box that would allow you to select any closed vectors. And then once you select either of those, there's further choices down the line. So on the other side, you can select vectors on a given layer. In fact, it shows all the layers that are available in your current project. And you can click a checkbox next to each one of those layers to choose which one you want this action that you're doing, the creating of this toolpath, to affect. And so once you've selected all of those, there's another checkbox which allows you to associate these changes that you've made, these filters, with the toolpath. And checking that box will allow any future toolpaths that are using this similar settings to be part of the template. So once you've chosen all of the different options that you have in this vector selector box, you close it out and hit calculate, and it will calculate the toolpath for you. So you're not done at that point, okay, because now you've just created the pattern for the vectors on a particular layer. And now you have to do the same thing for each of the other layers. So you deselect the layer that you were just on and select the new layer that you want to use from the layer menu. And then you set up the toolpath for the objects on that layer. So let's say it's the layer with the drilled holes. The only thing that would be visible on your screen at this point would be those circles that represents the location of the holes, and you'd select all of those, and then you'd hit the drill toolpath, or whichever toolpath you decided to use to make those. I mean, you could make it with a profile toolpath, profile inside if you wanted. But it would call up the information. You'd select your tool bit, you'd select what machining strategy you wanted to use, and any other features you wanted, how deep, peck drilling, whatever. And then again, you'd go down to the bottom and you'd hit that Selector button. And so you get into the vector selectors and you'd associate things with that toolpath and calculate again. And when you've done this with all 4 of the toolpaths, then you're ready to proceed and save that set of toolpaths as a template using the save all visible toolpaths as a template, because you click the checkbox in your tool path list, and you could use that button, and it would select all the visible toolpaths to use as a template. And you could also do each one individually if you wanted to, but in this case, we're trying to get them all together so that you're not doing a lot of heavy lifting later. Okay, so let's imagine now that we've got all of the 4 layers done and on our sample vector art. And now we want to make a modified set of art for instance, a ladies' room sign or a laboratory sign, or any number of signs. They can be different shapes for the signs, or they can all have a common look to them. Whatever it is that you do, you just make sure that when you create them, you create and name the 4 layers that you had in your previous template, and you name them the same thing. So we'd have one layer called Pocket Elements, one called Textures, another called Drill Holes, and one called Cutout. And you'd have the same thing in this new instance. So you could lay out all of these different drawings in a new session of Aspire, and just place them on the material nest them any way you want to, but you place them on the material. And then you can go in and load up the Toolpath template. And once you've done that, all you have to do is recalculate all your toolpaths. Use the Recalculate All Toolpaths button, and it will automatically apply the settings that you had for each of those layers to those drawings, and you're done. You have toolpaths for many different sign designs, all automatically done for you with this method, instead of having to do it multiple times with multiple elements. Because this is kind of a complicated process that we're describing, I think that this is one of those instances where I'm going to make a video available to show you just what I'm talking about in real terms, with something that's easy to see exactly, just how powerful this tool is and how useful it is. So I should have that up shortly after this episode goes live. I will leave a link to the video in the show notes, and you'll be able to go to YouTube. I'll post it up, and it'll be a free video anybody can go and look at on YouTube. And you'll be able to see the process and give it a whirl on your own machine at your own, leisure and at your own availability. So I just want to take a second and talk about show notes for a second. I know I mention show notes all the time, and I realize that a good portion of my audience is new to podcasts, and they might have no idea whatsoever what a show note is. A show note is really just a blog post on the CNCRTips.com website. So today's episode is episode 20. And to make things easy for you, all you would do is you'd type in CNCRTips.com/20, the number's 20. And that would take you to the show notes for this episode. And there might be pictures there, a link to this video, a description of any books or any programs or anything like that I mentioned in the episode, and that sort of thing. Just a little additional information to make it easy for you to reference this later when you need it. Because a lot of times you get these tips and it's not something that you need to know right away. So having the show notes, or blog post if you will, available for each episode allows you to go back and look things up when you need to. So I hope you find those useful, and I hope that explains something that you may have been wondering about but didn't feel like asking. So one thing I'd like to mention is that this new feature with the Toolpath templates isn't just limited to VCarve Pro. In fact, if you have Cut 2D Pro, which is the lower level program from Vectric, it also features the Toolpath template feature. So you'll be able to do that with Cut 2D Pro, also with VCarve Pro, and Aspire. So this is a feature that is available in all those three formats. And so it's something that you are able to take advantage of in a more production-like environment. Thank you again, Steve, for that wonderful question. Because your question was answered on the show, you'll be receiving a free gift. If you'd like to have your question featured on the air, we'll tell you how to do that after a short message from our sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. useful tools for makers.
Okay, we're back, and I'd just like to share a bit of listener feedback that we got from one of the members of the private Facebook group about episode 19, where we were talking about how you merge toolpaths. And I thought it was particularly appropriate to bring this up right now because we just finished an episode on this current one talking about doing things with toolpaths. So it is regarding automatic tool changer and how to implement a post processor for an automatic tool changer without actually having one.
Hello, Bill. My name is Jason, and one of the things that I noticed in your last podcast was that you said that most of the expensive machines use the automatic tool changer. And I'm sure that you know it, but I just wanted to add one thing to that, is that the automatic tool changer post processor can be used without having an automatic tool changer. I use the Big Tex screen set, and I think the 2010 screen set also allows this. But it allows me to use multiple tools and only zeroing the first tool. The rest are zeroed off of a reference plate. And the screen set that I have also has the capability to set up a laser, a crosshair laser, so that you can find your XY0 and so forth. So just wanted to add that in. Sure that you were aware of it, but maybe you can share it with other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for that information. It was very much appreciated. And we're also going to be sending you a free gift for sending in that feedback. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this 20th episode where we talked about some of the advanced features available in VCarve Pro, Cut2D Pro, and Aspire for toolpathing to make it easier for you to do multiple production work. I hope that you'll take the time to send in feedback if this episode has helped you, or to leave a rating and review on iTunes. Anything like that really helps to bring this podcast to more people's attention, and I truly do appreciate it when you take the time to let me know, how we're doing. And I'd just like to thank everyone who's done that so far. Thank you. I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, cncroutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's cncroutertips.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help, or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone, and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the CNC Router Tips podcast. If you'd like to join our free mailing list, you can go to cncroutertips.com, and there's a link right there on the top of the page which tells you how to do that. Thank you so much, and have a great day.